For China's economy, a flexible forecast, Beijing has set a range for its projected economic growth for only the second time. Premier Li Keqiang spoke at the opening of this year's National People's Congress, warning of a difficult battle ahead. CCTV's Han Peng is following the meetings. He joins us live from Beijing.
Susan, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has set the country's GDP growth target at 6.5 to 7% for 2016. This is the first time that China has given a range instead of a specific point for its growth target. As the National People's Congress kicks off, in the next 2 weeks, about 3,000 deputies from across the country will discuss and vote on Premier Li's report. They will also raise their own motions too as the session goes on. For China, there is no time to stop. The country is growing a little slower than normal, but in a more vigorous society.
In my region, what the people care about the most is poverty alleviation. So my motion is reducing poverty.
My motion this year is about further opening up the country's economy.
The National People's Congress session started with Premier Li Keqiang's government work report, in which he reviews China's gain and loss in 2015 and outlines the task in 2016.
This year we set the target of GDP growth between 6.5 and 7%. This takes into consideration the guarantee of employment and people's livelihoods. To meet the target, we have acknowledged the challenges of both the sluggish global economic recovery and the continued downward pressure at home.
It's the first year the Premier had set a range instead of a point for the growth target. Experts say it means the country is becoming less obsessed with the growth figures and more on the quality and consequences of the growth. Premier Li's work report focused a lot on economic reforms and restructuring.
We must accelerate breaking down the obstacles in our systems and mechanisms and increase market vitality through supply-side reform and replacing old drivers of growth with new ones. We should strive to achieve major breakthroughs in basic research, applied research, and research in strategic and frontier fields by 2020.
Some analysts believe that at the moment it's still too early for China to completely stop setting growth targets because there is still a habit in the Chinese market to have an idea of the general direction of the government's economic policies before private sectors making their own investment decisions. And more importantly, if you do the math, you'll see that 6.5% is actually the bottom line of China's annual growth in the next 5 years, because the government has to fulfill its promise that by 2020, China should double its GDP per capita in 2010. So passing the right economic policies for the next 5 years would be crucial for the Chinese leadership. Susan?
Han Peng, tell us about some other highlighted topics from the speech.
Well, of course, another key figure coming out from Saturday's meeting is the growth of China's military budget. China plans to increase its defense budget in 2016 by 7.6% to nearly 1 trillion RMB, or around 150 billion US dollars. That's according to a draft budget report proposed on the NPC session. If the budget is passed, China would become the second largest defense spender in the world, following the United States. But it's also noticeable that the increase this year is the smallest in the country's military spending in the past 6 years.
We will work to make the military more revolutionary, modern, and well-structured in every respect, and remain committed to safeguarding national security. We will strengthen in a coordinated way military preparedness on all fronts and for all scenarios, and work meticulously to ensure combat readiness and border, coastal, and air defense control.
Premier Li also laid out policies for Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. Last year, there have been several violent accidents and protests in Hong Kong against the government and the mainland. And in Taiwan, its newly elected leader Tsai Ing-wen is still ambiguous on the 1992 consensus, which is the common ground between the mainland and Taiwan for one China. But Premier Li says China's policies on maintaining one China, two systems and a high degree of autonomy remain unchanged.
and we will act in strict compliance with China's constitution and the basic laws of the Hong Kong and Macau special administrative regions. We are convinced that Hong Kong and Macau will maintain long-term prosperity and stability. We will remain committed to our major policies on Taiwan, uphold the 1992 consensus as the political foundation, oppose separatist activities for the independence of Taiwan, safeguard China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, maintain the peaceful growth of cross-straits relations, and safeguard peace and stability in the Taiwan Straits.
2016 is also the first year of China's 13th five-year plan. The government made a pledge long ago that by the plan concludes in 2020, China should build up a moderately prosperous society for all people in all aspects. In the next 2 weeks, deputies from across the country will discuss and cast their votes on all the proposed policies above to make sure a good beginning of that five-year plan is half done. Back to you, Susan.
Han Peng, thank you for that live in Beijing.